The last message I submitted to the internal code repository before everything unraveled was a detailed pull request comment explaining our updated fraud detection algorithms. I explicitly noted that the new heuristic engine successfully eliminated synthetic risk vectors while reducing false positive flags by 23%. It was the culmination of 18 long months of grueling technical architecture, late nights spent analyzing transaction anomalies and refining predictive models. At 49 years old, with over 2 decades of principal software engineering experience behind me, I knew the difference between a routine maintenance patch and a breakthrough enterprise asset. The next morning, that pull request was completely gone. In fact, the entire repository URL returned a blank page with a 404 error code. I noticed it at 8:15 on Friday morning while sitting at my desk with a cup of lukewarm black coffee reviewing my daily GitHub notifications. I refreshed the browser 3 times, cleared my local cache, and checked the team permissions matrix. Nothing remained. There was no archive link, no active fork, and no technical migration note. It was as if my entire project had simply ceased to exist within the corporate infrastructure. 3 minutes later, an automated internal email landed in my inbox from Denise Thorne, the Vice President of Product Strategy. The email had no professional greeting, no contextual explanation, and no phone extension attached. It simply read that effective immediately. The Vanguard predictive risk engine was being reassigned to Mason Briggs for his summer rotational learning experience. The message instructed me to compile a complete architectural handoff document by 5 o'clock that evening to ensure a smooth transition for cross-functional growth. I sat motionless in my ergonomic office chair and stared at the glowing monitor in complete disbelief. Mason Briggs was a 22-year-old summer intern who had joined our department 6 weeks prior. He was also the nephew of Howard Briggs, our Senior Director of Human Resources. Mason's entire technical contribution during the previous sprint had consisted of updating a single dashboard button from navy blue to sky blue, an update that inadvertently broke 3 cascaded style sheets across dark mode environments. To hand a mission-critical cybersecurity and fraud prevention platform to an entry-level relative was not cross-functional growth. It was blatant corporate nepotism wrapped in hollow management buzzwords. Management assumed that because I was a quiet senior architect who rarely engaged in office politics, I would passively accept the reallocation, hand over my documentation, and quietly find another project to work on. What Denise Thorne and Howard Briggs completely failed to understand was that I had not constructed the core predictive engine in isolation on company time. The underlying math, the behavioral profiling matrices, and the proprietary pattern matching heuristics were conceived, coded, and tested on my personal workstation at home during off hours over the previous 2 years. Under Section 106 of Title 17 of the United States Code, federal copyright law explicitly protects original works of authorship created outside the scope of employment without company resources. I had been meticulous about keeping strict boundaries. I never plugged corporate flash drives into my personal machine, never pushed code to company servers without recording independent commit timestamps, and never utilized internal cloud environments to train my private sandbox models. The company had licensed my staging build for internal testing, but they did not own the underlying intellectual architecture. I gathered my laptop, closed my email client without responding, and drove home early that Friday afternoon. I stepped into my home office, poured myself a glass of iced tea, and powered up my multi-monitor Linux workstation. The room was quiet except for the subtle hum of cooling fans. I opened my local repository clone and began reviewing the codebase line by line. I was not planning to sabotage their deployment or delete company files. I was a professional engineer, not a malicious hacker. Instead, I prepared a precise legal and technical separation script designed to reclaim what was rightfully mine. Before executing any commands, I created an immutable backup archive on an encrypted external drive. This archive contained not only the full source code and version history, but also archived Slack conversations, pull request timestamps, timecard logs, and written directives from Denise Thorne dated 6 months prior. where she explicitly informed me that my behavioral profiling research was not part of quarterly corporate deliverables and should be handled on my own personal time. That single email was an absolute golden ticket under federal employment standards. By 3 o'clock on Saturday morning, while the rest of the city slept, I completed the technical isolation process. Through my local environment, I executed a migration script that scrubbed my proprietary behavioral algorithms, titled the Stingray module, clean out of the company's main branch. In its place, I inserted lightweight open-source placeholder functions that returned generic true values for basic compliance checks. The shell of the software remained functional for basic demo purposes, but the intelligent brain of the system had been completely extracted. I then pushed the complete, fully functional Stingray module to a private, triple-encrypted personal repository protected by hardware security keys. Furthermore, I configured automated monitoring script hooks to track any unauthorized deployment attempts or external access requests to my private domain. As I shut down my primary workstation screens at 3:30 in the morning, I knew that the management team was walking into Monday's executive review holding an empty cardboard box disguised as an enterprise asset. To understand why this extraction was so devastating to the management team, one must understand what the Stingray module actually accomplished within our enterprise software suite. Standard fraud detection software operates on rigid, static rules. If a customer attempts 3 rapid password resets from a new Internet Protocol address, the system flags the account. However, modern financial cybercrime relies on sophisticated synthetic identities that mimic normal human browsing behavior over extended periods, making static rules virtually useless in modern financial environments. The Stingray module operated on dynamic behavioral drift analysis. It calculated micro-timing between keystrokes, analyzed subtle mouse movement vectors, and mapped structural transaction flows in real time. During our quarterly internal audit, my prototype had successfully identified and prevented $4,500,000 in potential fraudulent transactions across our payment gateways. It was the primary selling point that Denise Thorne had showcased to the executive board during her annual budget review to justify her department's expanded capital allocation and strategic hiring plan. When Mason Briggs cloned the company repository on Sunday afternoon to prepare for Monday morning's executive sprint review, he inherited nothing more than an empty wooden frame where a high-powered engine used to sit. Because he lacked basic architectural understanding, he mistook my lightweight placeholder functions for clean refactored code. In his mind, the software looked streamlined because the underlying source files had dropped from 40,000 lines of complex C++ logic down to less than 800 lines of basic scripting. He assumed that my long, sophisticated algorithms were simply redundant legacy code that his fresh perspective had successfully trimmed down to improve runtime execution speed. At 7:45 on Sunday evening, my automated system monitoring alerted me that someone had accessed the company's staging server and run a build script. I watched remotely from my living room terminal as Mason executed the simplified test suite. The terminal output displayed a single green text line reading System Status Normal. Satisfied with what he assumed was superior engineering, Mason committed the changes under his own username, attached his name as lead author on the executive presentation deck, and scheduled the live demonstration for 9 o'clock Monday morning. Without performing a single stress test on real transaction data or verifying the internal calculation modules. While Mason was celebrating his effortless victory, I spent Sunday evening organizing my formal legal documentation into a single comprehensive electronic portfolio. I drafted a 17-page technical white paper documenting the development lineage of the Stingray module from its inception on my home machine to its current status. I attached cryptographic SHA-256 commit hashes, raw Git tree records, and notarized affidavits proving independent creation prior to any corporate deployment. I saved this document under the title Vanguard Architecture Lineage and Ownership Report, locked it behind biometric authentication, and set a scheduled email delivery for Monday afternoon. Furthermore, I compiled a complete digital index of external sandbox testing logs, hardware purchase receipts for my personal development servers, and independent cloud compute invoices that proved beyond any technical doubt that zero corporate assets were utilized during the research phase. I knew that in high-stakes corporate disputes, empirical proof and chronological documentation were far more powerful than emotional arguments. Monday morning arrived with a clear blue sky and an atmosphere of intense corporate anticipation at our corporate headquarters. The quarterly sprint review was a high-stakes event attended by senior directors, lead software architects, and members of the executive board, including Chief Technology Officer Alan Bennett. The presentation took place in the main 7th-floor conference room, equipped with dual high-definition projection screens, surround audio, and leather executive seating. I arrived at 8:45, poured myself a cup of black coffee, and took a seat near the back row of the conference room. I maintained a calm, neutral expression, dressed in my standard ironed Oxford shirt and dark trousers. Room temperature was cool, but the atmosphere felt heavy with underlying tension. Denise Thorne was moving around the front of the room with an energized smile, handing out printed agenda sheets to board members and chatting animatedly with Howard Briggs about talent acquisition, pipelines, and leadership development. Mason Briggs sat at the presenter's podium in a freshly ironed designer blazer, adjusting his laptop connections and adjusting his microphone. He looked supremely confident, occasionally glancing back at me with a subtle smirk that clearly suggested he believed he had outmaneuvered a senior engineer without consequence. He had converted my complex technical flowcharts into colorful presentation slides filled with corporate buzzwords such as next-generation synergy, agile velocity transformation, and streamlined risk mitigation. At exactly 9 o'clock, Chief Technology Officer Alan Bennett called the meeting to order. Alan was a seasoned 56-year-old technologist with sharp blue eyes, a short silver beard, and a reputation for tolerating zero corporate nonsense. He scanned the agenda sheet, adjusted his reading glasses, and gestured toward the podium. He announced that today's presentation would open with a demonstration of our updated fraud prevention platform, highlighting recent architectural improvements led by our new rotational talent under Denise Thorne's strategic direction. Denise stepped up to the microphone first, delivering a 5-minute introductory speech praising the company's commitment to agility and fresh perspective. She explicitly stated that by reassigning the project to Mason Briggs, the team had eliminated legacy technical debt and unlocked unprecedented operational efficiency across our financial infrastructure. She omitted my name entirely from the presentation history, framing the entire platform as a collaborative departmental achievement brought to fruition by her new leadership team. I sat silently in the back row, taking quiet sips of my coffee, and watched the trap spring shut as the room dimmed for the live code demonstration. Mason Briggs stepped up to the podium, cleared his throat, and initiated his slide deck presentation. For the first 10 minutes, he walked the executive audience through high-level conceptual slides, regurgitating the exact metrics my original Stingray module had generated during the previous quarter. He proudly highlighted the $4,500,000 in fraud prevention, attributing the success to modern refactoring techniques and streamlined code organization. Alan Bennett leaned forward in his leather executive chair, resting his chin on his hands, and observed the slides with intense scrutiny. As a former principal system architect himself, Alan cared very little for marketing buzzwords or colorful diagrams. He waited patiently for the theoretical portion of the meeting to conclude before addressing the core technical reality of the software platform. At 9:15, Mason transitioned from the slide deck to the live terminal environment to demonstrate the real-time anomaly classification engine. The large projection screens shifted to display a live command line interface connected to the corporate staging environment. Mason typed out the standard execution command to run a simulated batch of 50,000 synthetic transaction profiles through the fraud filter. He pressed the Enter key with a flourish, expecting to see dynamic risk probability charts, behavioral anomaly matrices, and high-frequency alert logs flood across the screen as my engine normally produced. Instead, the terminal paused for less than 2 seconds, bypassed the synthetic fraud profiles entirely, and spat out a single, plain text output line reading System Status Normal. Silence descended upon the seventh floor conference room. It was not a polite pause or a momentary network delay. It was a profound, suffocating silence that hung in the air like heavy smoke. Alan Bennett lowered his glasses and squinted at the massive projection screen. He adjusted his microphone and asked Mason to scroll down to view the active anomaly classification grid and the live behavioral drift vectors. Mason's face turned noticeably pale under the bright LED conference room lights. His hands began to tremble slightly as he moved his wireless mouse across the desktop. He scrolled up, then down, then cleared the terminal window and re-executed the test script. Once again, the system bypassed the complex fraud vectors instantaneously and printed the identical, useless message, System Status Normal. Denise Thorne's confident smile froze instantly. She stepped closer to the podium and whispered urgently to Mason, asking why the graphical visualization interface had not loaded. Mason stammered incoherently into his microphone, claiming there appeared to be a minor staging server network mismatch or a temporary database indexing conflict caused by legacy code dependencies remaining from previous engineering iterations. Alan Bennett raised his hand, cutting Mason off mid-sentence. He unmuted his master microphone and turned his gaze directly toward Denise Thorne. He asked where the core heuristic classification algorithms were located within the active repository branch, noting that a 50,000 transaction batch could not possibly evaluate in under 2 seconds without bypassing behavioral analysis entirely. Denise turned toward the back of the room, her eyes darting frantically until they locked onto me. She called my name into the microphone, her voice carrying a sharp edge of forced authority. She asked if I could step forward and clarify why the secondary modules were failing to execute within Mason's newly refactored repository environment. I calmly stood up from my seat, straightened my jacket, and walked down the center aisle toward the guest microphone at the front table. I did not raise my voice, nor did I display any anger or triumph. I spoke with the measured, steady cadence of a professional explaining standard system architecture to a board of directors. I stated clearly that there was no server network mismatch or database indexing conflict. I explained that the simplified repository Mason had been presenting did not contain the Stingray heuristic engine, because that specific intellectual property had been systematically extracted back to its original development environment over the weekend. Denise Thorne gasped audibly, while Howard Briggs stood up from his seat in outrage, accusing me of sabotaging company property and violating corporate IT policies. I turned directly toward Howard and addressed his accusation with absolute precision. I informed him that the Stingray module was designed, developed, and tested on my personal workstation outside company hours, utilizing private sandbox datasets, and was fully protected under federal copyright laws under Title 17 of the United States Code. I reminded Denise Thorne in front of the entire executive board that on March 12th, she had issued a formal written directive stating that behavioral profiling research was outside the scope of company deliverables and must not be conducted on corporate time. By issuing that directive, the company had officially disclaimed employment scope over the project. When management revoked my repository permissions on Friday morning to hand the project to an intern, they severed the non-exclusive implied staging license I had granted the firm. Alan Bennett turned his full attention to me, his eyes sharp and analytical. He asked if I had documented proof of independent creation, time-stamped version control histories, and explicit separation of development environments. I reached into my leather briefcase, retrieved 3 printed copies of my comprehensive Vanguard architecture, lineage, and ownership report, and handed them directly to Alan Bennett, Chief Counsel Rachel Miller, and the executive board members. Alan opened the folder and began reviewing the SHA-256 commit hashes, Git timestamp logs, and Denise Thorne's signed directive email. Within 3 minutes, his expression shifted from concern to stern realization. He closed the folder, turned to Chief Counsel Rachel Miller, and asked for her immediate legal assessment of the situation as Denise Thorne and Howard Briggs stood frozen in stunned embarrassment. Rachel Miller, our Chief Data and Privacy Counsel, was a sharp 42-year-old attorney who had defended the corporation through numerous complex regulatory audits and contractual disputes. She recognized instantly that the company was facing an absolute legal disaster if the firm attempted to deploy or commercialize software containing proprietary algorithms created by an employee outside their employment scope. Without a formal assignment agreement, they would be committing willful copyright infringement under federal law, exposing the enterprise to statutory damages exceeding $750,000 per violation. Rachel leaned into her microphone and requested an immediate executive recess, instructing Denise Thorne, Howard Briggs, Alan Bennett, and myself to step into the adjacent executive boardroom for an emergency closed-door session. The remaining attendees were instructed to clear the main conference room immediately and refrain from discussing internal architectural matters with external parties. Once inside the private boardroom, the atmosphere became intensely confrontational. Howard Briggs immediately attempted to regain control of the narrative, asserting that as an employee, anything I produced belonged unconditionally to the corporation under standard employment agreements. He threatened me with immediate termination for cause, breach of loyalty, and potential civil litigation if I did not instantly surrender the encryption keys to the Stingray module. I remained completely unbothered by his aggressive posturing. I sat down at the mahogany conference table, opened my tablet, and displayed a high-definition screen recording captured 3 weeks prior. The recording captured a hallway conversation between Howard Briggs and Denise Thorne outside the executive lounge. In the crystal-clear audio, Howard was heard chuckling while telling Denise to transfer the primary fraud project to his nephew Mason before the quarterly review, explicitly noting that senior engineers rarely fight back and that securing the project under Mason's name would guarantee Howard's annual executive performance bonus. Howard's face turned completely ghost white as the audio recording echoed through the boardroom speakers. Denise Thorne sank back into her leather chair, her hands trembling as she realized that her career trajectory had just collided with an immovable wall of empirical proof. I looked directly across the table at Howard Briggs and Denise Thorne and outlined the explicit legal violations their actions represented. Beyond federal copyright infringement under Title 17 of the United States Code, their conspiracy to misappropriate proprietary technical assets for personal familial gain constituted a direct breach of fiduciary duty to the corporation, fraudulent misrepresentation to the executive board, and intentional creation of corporate liability under the Defend Trade Secrets Act. Furthermore, I noted that attempting to terminate a senior engineer for asserting statutory intellectual property rights after explicitly proving executive misconduct would trigger immediate retaliatory discharge claims under federal employment protection statutes and state labor codes. I detailed how independent corporate audits would scrutinize every financial ledger and departmental reassignment executed under Howard's tenure, revealing systemic corporate governance failures across human resources operations. Rachel Miller turned to Howard Briggs and Denise Thorne with cold fury. She informed them in no uncertain terms that their unauthorized reassignment of the project had compromised the company's entire cybersecurity architecture, exposed the firm to massive federal legal liability, and misled the chief technology officer regarding departmental technical capabilities. She stated flatly that Howard's legal interpretation of employee work product was utterly baseless given Denise's explicit written directive 6 months prior. She emphasized that any attempt to retaliate against me would result in immediate corporate action against both executives personally, including formal referral to the board's governance committee and immediate suspension of executive privileges. Alan Bennett closed his laptop with a loud snap that resonated through the room. He addressed the executive board members present, stating that the company's priority was protecting its core operational integrity and resolving this dispute without public exposure or litigation. He turned to me and asked what specific remedies and terms I required to settle the matter completely and provide the firm with an enterprise license to utilize the Stingray module. I presented my non-negotiable settlement conditions, which I had carefully drafted with my external legal counsel over the weekend. First, the company was required to issue an immediate internal announcement to the entire engineering department, clarifying the true authorship of the Vanguard platform and recognizing my sole creation of the Stingray module. Second, Denise Thorne and Howard Briggs were required to submit formal, written apologies for misrepresenting project ownership. Third, the company was required to execute a formal technical licensing agreement, paying my independent consulting firm an upfront licensing fee of $38,000 for non-exclusive enterprise rights to the Stingray algorithms, alongside a recurring annual maintenance retainer. Finally, I demanded complete administrative independence, reporting directly to Chief Technology Officer Alan Bennett with zero oversight from Denise Thorne or Howard Briggs. Alan Bennett did not hesitate for a single second. He looked across the table at Rachel Miller, who nodded in complete agreement. Alan stated that the terms were entirely fair, reasonable, and necessary to protect the corporation from devastating legal fallout. He instructed Rachel to draft the binding settlement and licensing agreements immediately, while Denise and Howard sat in complete silence. By 2 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon, the formal legal agreements were finalized, reviewed by my external attorney, and signed by all parties inside the executive suite. The $38,000 initial licensing fee was wired directly to my corporate consulting account before the close of business. At 3:30 that same afternoon, an official corporate-wide email was broadcast to the entire engineering and product divisions from the office of the Chief Technology Officer. The announcement provided an explicit technical clarification regarding the Vanguard Risen EGAS engine, recognizing my principal authorship of the Stingray heuristic architecture, detailing its development lineage, and confirming that future system enhancements would be executed under my direct technical leadership. The internal impact was immediate and profound. Corporate Slack channels exploded with supportive reactions from fellow software architects and senior developers, who had long suffered under Denise Thorne's aggressive management style and Howard Briggs's nepotistic practices. Over 40 engineers attached positive reactions to the announcement, sending private messages thanking me for standing up against executive misappropriation and setting an undeniable precedent for technical authorship rights across our engineering organization. The consequences for the antagonists were swift and uncompromising. Howard Briggs was placed on immediate administrative leave, pending a formal internal audit into executive conflict of interest and human resources policy violations. 3 weeks later, his quiet resignation was announced internally, citing a desire to pursue personal business interests. His nephew, Mason Briggs, was quietly removed from the software development division and reassigned to basic paper document archiving in the facility's basement. For the remainder of his summer rotation, stripped of all system administrative access and network credentials, Denise Thorne was stripped of her product portfolio oversight and reassigned to an administrative committee with zero direct reports or budget authority. Her reputation within the enterprise was completely shattered as senior directors openly avoided collaborating with her on future strategic initiatives. She was left managing routine documentation, compliance spreadsheets in total corporate obscurity, stripped of all her former authority and executive status within the building. With my professional reputation fully vindicated and my technical authority firmly established, I oversaw the seamless reintegration of the Stingray module into our primary staging environment. Under my direct supervision, the platform operated with flawless precision, successfully flagging over $6 million in sophisticated synthetic fraud attempts over the subsequent quarter. Every transaction anomaly was captured effortlessly, proving to the entire executive board that true innovation requires deep technical expertise rather than executive shortcuts. Furthermore, I established structured mentorship protocols for junior software engineers, ensuring that entry-level developers receive genuine technical guidance based on merit rather than executive favoritism. The engineering department experienced a tremendous boost in morale, as transparency and technical integrity became the core operational standards of our division. However, I had no intention of remaining in a corporate environment that had demonstrated such fundamental toxicity at the executive level. Over the following 6 months, while operating under my direct reporting structure with Alan Bennett, I established a private technology consulting firm specializing in advanced behavioral fraud analytics. Utilizing the leverage from my trademarked Stingray platform, I secured an exclusive international licensing agreement with a premier European financial technology firm based in Zurich, receiving silent equity and a substantial monthly consulting retainer. On a crisp Friday afternoon 9 months after the sprint review incident, I submitted my formal notice of voluntary resignation to Chief Technology Officer Alan Bennett. My departure was completely amicable. Alan personally hosted a farewell luncheon for me at a premier downtown steakhouse, praising my technical brilliance, legal composure, and unwavering professional integrity. He noted that in his 30 years of corporate technology leadership, he had rarely witnessed an engineer execute such a flawless technical and legal defense as I packed my personal belongings into small cardboard boxes. On my final afternoon at the office, the engineering department was quiet. I retrieved my favorite ceramic coffee mug, which bore the phrase, "Code with precision, defend with purpose," and stepped toward the elevator bank. I glanced across the floor one last time. Howard Briggs's former corner office stood completely empty, its glass walls bare and unlit. Denise Thorne was sitting alone at a small cubicle in the corner, staring blankly at a computer screen, with no team members present in her vicinity. Mason Briggs was nowhere to be seen, having completed his demoted rotation months prior. As the elevator doors closed smoothly before me, I felt a deep sense of quiet satisfaction and total professional freedom. I had not resorted to petty sabotage or emotional outbursts. I had utilized meticulous technical documentation, strict adherence to legal boundaries, and absolute composure to dismantle corporate arrogance, and reclaim what was rightfully mine. I stepped out of the corporate tower into the warm afternoon sunlight, put on my sunglasses, and walked toward my vehicle. My smartphone buzzed in my pocket with a notification confirming a new consulting retainer payment from Zurich. I smiled, started the engine, and drove toward the next chapter of my career, knowing that true professional power belongs to those who build with integrity and defend their work without compromise.